What do you do when you're fired by an arrogant punk who never broke a sweat for the company you built? I'm James Harper, and for 11 years I poured my life into turning a small Chicago financial consulting firm into a major player. I closed hundreds of deals, trained an entire team, and worked late nights to keep promises to clients, even when it meant missing my daughter's birthday or choking back tears after my dad passed. I gave them everything: sweat, heart, the works. But one day, the boss's son waltzed in and tossed me out like yesterday's trash. His name was Ethan Brooks, the new CEO, handed the throne just because his last name was Brooks. He didn't know me, didn't know the blood I'd spilled for this place, and sure as hell didn't know I held the key to the biggest contract this company ever chased. "You're fired," he said, like he was ordering a burger. I could have yelled, punched a wall, or begged. I didn't. I smiled, walked out of his office, and left him with the biggest mistake of his life. This isn't a story about rage. It's about justice. The kind that's quiet, smart, and makes cocky suits pay the price. They thought I'd fade away, but they were dead wrong. My dad, a Vietnam vet, taught me, time answers everything, and my time was coming. I can still see that moment, clear as if it happened yesterday. I was standing by the office coffee machine in the break room, splashing a bit of oat milk into my morning brew. Chicago sunlight slipped through the windows, glinting off the neat rows of cubicles outside. Our office sat in the heart of the loop, right by the Chicago River, where skyscrapers shimmered like giant mirrors for 11 years. I'd worked here, building the client services department from nothing. I'd negotiated over 120 contracts, from small deals to multi-million-dollar wins. I'd trained nearly every member of the team, now typing away and whispering on calls out there. But that morning, everything I'd built seemed to mean squat. Ethan Brooks strode into the break room, 30 years old, hair slicked back, wearing a pricey suit but too lazy to tie his tie right. He was the son of William Brooks, the founder of this financial consulting firm, and now the new CEO. Ethan didn't say hi, didn't smile, just looked at me like I was some old chair in storage. He planned to chuck. "James, I need you in my office. Now," he said, his voice flat, not a request but an order. I set my coffee down, trying to shake off the tension creeping up my chest. I followed him, weaving through the buzzing cubicles, where colleagues hammered out emails and reports. Ethan's office was on the 32nd floor, overlooking the Willis Tower sparkling in the distance. Inside, his fancy cologne choked the air. He didn't sit, just stood there, flipping through a stack of papers like he was picking lunch. "You're fired," he said, voice dead, no emotion. "We don't need lazy people like you dragging this place down." I blinked, thinking it was some sick joke. "Sorry, what'd you say?" I asked, keeping my tone steady, though my heart pounded like a drum. "You heard me." Ethan shot back, eyes glued to his papers. "Pack your stuff and get out, effective immediately." 11 years. From a fresh-faced grad, I'd given this company everything. Late nights, I sat in that office while Chicago slept, streetlights glowing outside. Canceled vacations. I missed my daughter Emily's birthdays. Missed watching Chicago Cubs games with my dad before he passed. I took client calls even when I was wrestling with personal pain, like when my mom was sick, or when I signed my divorce papers. I gave them my sweat, my time, my heart, everything to keep this company standing tall. And now, I was being kicked out like some nobody, by an arrogant punk who got the CEO chair just for being a Brooks. My heart slammed against my ribs, begging to break free. I wanted to yell, to slam the desk, to demand answers. But I didn't. My dad, a Vietnam vet who'd seen more than his share of fights, taught me, emotions don't beat the truth. I took a deep breath, locked eyes with Ethan, and smiled. A calm, polite, deliberate smile. "Got it," I said, voice even. "Have a nice day, Ethan." I turned, walked out of his office, head held high. Inside, I was shaking, but nobody saw it. Colleagues glanced up as I passed, a few standing, ready to ask questions, but I gave a subtle shake of my head. "Don't make this harder." I went to my desk, packed up in silence. The family photo on my desk, me, Emily, and my dad, stopped me cold. I touched the old watch my dad left me, engraved with, "Time answers everything." I slipped it into my pocket, sealed the box, and left the office. Driving home through Chicago's streets, memories flooded in like an old movie reel. I thought of my first days, when William Brooks interviewed me in a cramped room, asking, "You ready to bleed for this company?" I had, and then some. I remembered the deals I'd saved, like the time I flew to New York at midnight to talk a client out of ditching a $5 million contract. I remembered training new hires, patiently coaching them through tough client calls. And I remembered the sacrifices, nights, when Emily asked, "Dad, late again?" And all I could do was apologize over the phone. But I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was curious. Why did Ethan do this? That question gnawed at me, as I sat in my dim apartment, the glow of the Chicago River flickering through my window. We were about to finalize a deal with the Al Mansour Group, a $20 million contract I'd prepped for 8 months. I knew every detail, from the client's demands to the legal fine print. The final meeting was set for Friday, just days away. So why fire me now? Did Ethan even read the contract? Or was there something he didn't want me to see? I stared at my dad's watch on the table, its second hand ticking steadily. My dad used to say, "Don't rush, James. The truth always finds the light." I took a sip of cold coffee, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. Ethan thought he could play me, but he was dead wrong. He didn't know his mistake had just opened a door to justice, and I was gonna walk through it, one step at a time. The next morning, I woke up in my small Chicago apartment, the light from the Chicago River shimmering through the window. Last night, I barely slept, my mind spinning with one question. Why did Ethan fire me right before the Al Mansour deal? This $20 million contract was the result of 8 months of my blood and sweat, from negotiating with international partners to drafting complex legal terms. I knew every detail, every client demand, like you know the way home after a long day. So why did Ethan choose now to kick me out? He thought he could play me, but something wasn't right, and I was determined to find out. My phone buzzed at 9 a.m., an unknown number. I let it ring, unsure if I could handle another blow. But curiosity got the better of me. "Hello?" I said, voice rough from a sleepless night. "James, it's William Brooks." The voice hit me like a jolt. William, the man who'd interviewed and hired me 11 years ago after just one meeting. He was the founder of the company, a tough but fair man who put work ethic above everything. "I just got to the office," he said, his voice tight as a wire, "and your desk's empty. What the hell did you pack up and leave for?" I took a deep breath, keeping my tone steady. "Your son fired me yesterday, said I was lazy and not needed." Silence. Then I heard him suck in a breath, his voice sharp. "What?" I laid it out, no embellishments. I described how Ethan called me into his office, how he flipped through papers like he was picking lunch, and how he declared me fired without even looking me in the eye. When I mentioned the Al Mansour contract, William cut in, his voice trembling with anger. "Did he read the contract? He's supposed to meet them at 11 today, right?" I frowned, feeling a puzzle piece snap into place. "I set up that meeting," I said, "but Ethan didn't ask about it. He just told me to pack and go." Jesus Christ. I heard papers rustling, then a loud thud, like he'd slammed his fist on the desk. "James, your contract has a clause, one I insisted on after that contract scandal 5 years ago. You're not just the project manager. You're the only one authorized to negotiate with Al Mansour. Without you, that deal falls apart, legally, ethically, and practically." I froze, like someone had flipped on a light in a dark room. Ethan hadn't read the contract. He didn't know he'd just shot himself in the foot. A new feeling stirred in my chest, not anger, but control. Ethan had acted too fast, and now he was standing on a ticking time bomb he'd set himself. "So what now, Mr. Brooks?" I asked, voice still calm. William sighed, sounding exhausted. I don't know what he was thinking. "I'll handle it. But James, you need to know you're irreplaceable on this." He hung up, leaving me in the quiet of my apartment, the Chicago River's light dancing on the ceiling. I sat on the couch, staring at the cold coffee on the table. My dad's watch, engraved with "Time answers everything," lay beside it, its second hand ticking steadily. My dad, a Vietnam vet, always said patience was the strongest weapon. "Don't rush, James," he'd tell me. "The truth always finds the light." I gave a bitter smile. 11 years of dedication, and this is how it goes down. An arrogant punk, thinking he can run a company like it's a video game. But real companies don't forgive stupid mistakes, and Ethan was about to learn that the hard way. I thought about my daughter Emily, now 12. These past years, I worked to give her a better life, but I'd missed so much. Those Cubs games we used to watch with my dad, the evenings she waited for me to come home and tell her about school. Getting fired didn't just sting because I lost my job. It hurt because I felt I'd failed Emily, failed the promise to always be there for her. But I wasn't about to let Ethan steal my dignity. Not ever. My phone buzzed again. Ethan this time. I let it go to voicemail, not in the mood for his voice. A minute later, another call from reception, then legal, then accounting. My phone lit up like a Christmas tree. I didn't pick up a single one. Ethan's voicemail came through, his voice strained, missing yesterday's cocky edge. James, it's me. There was a misunderstanding yesterday. I moved too fast. We need you back today. It's urgent. Call me back. Urgent. The word rolled around my head like a marble in a glass. Not a single apology, not even a fake corporate one. Just panic dressed up as politeness. I took a sip of cold coffee, still not budging from the couch. Ethan thought I'd come running back, begging for mercy. He was dead wrong. I didn't need to yell or confront him. The truth would speak for me, and it was starting to make some noise. By 10:30 a.m., Sarah Mitchell called. Sarah used to be on my team before moving to marketing. We were close, spending hours at the bar, near the office, swapping stories about work stress over cold beer. James, you won't believe what's going down, she whispered, her voice buzzing with excitement. Ethan just got chewed out by William in front of the whole meeting room. William brought the Al Mansur contract and asked point blank, "Did you read this before firing James?" Ethan tried to bullshit his way through, talking about new directions and re-evaluating roles, but William wasn't having it. He flipped right to the clause, the one that says you're the only one who can negotiate this deal. I raised an eyebrow, a faint smile creeping up. And what did Ethan say? Nothing, Sarah said. He went pale like he'd seen a ghost. William told him if this deal falls through, his CEO chair's on the line. James, the office is a mess. Everyone knows you're the one they can't do without. I thanked Sarah and hung up, standing to look out the window. The Chicago River sparkled under the sun, calm as if it didn't care about human chaos. This city always grounded me, even on the darkest days. I thought of my dad, of those afternoons he took me to Wrigley Field to watch the Cubs, teaching me, a man doesn't need to raise his voice to prove he's right. Ethan had underestimated me, and now he was paying for that arrogance. My dad's watch kept ticking on the table, like a reminder that time was on my side. Ethan thought he could erase me, but he didn't know his mistake had just handed me the reins. I wasn't angry, I was curious. And that curiosity was going to lead me to justice, the quiet, sharp kind that makes guys like Ethan pay. I stood by the window of my apartment, watching the Chicago River glint under the midday sun. Sarah's call still echoed in my head. Ethan had been chewed out by William in front of the entire office, his face pale as he realized his mistake. He hadn't read the Al Mansur contract, didn't know I was the only one authorized to negotiate it. He thought he could kick me out and carry on like nothing happened. He was dead wrong. But I wasn't in a rush. I didn't need to race back to the office to prove I was right. I wanted them to understand my worth, not with words, but with actions. I turned back to the couch, my dad's watch still ticking on the table, like a reminder that time was on my side. My dad, a Vietnam vet, used to say, "Never let emotions take the wheel, James. The truth does a better job." I took a sip of cold coffee, opened my laptop, and kept digging through the Al Mansur contract files. Ethan had forgotten to revoke my company access. Another dumb mistake. I downloaded every email, note, and contract draft, carefully organizing them in a secure folder. I texted Tom, an old buddy in legal, asking him to review the authorization clause. Just confirm it for me. Nothing official, I wrote. I needed to be sure everything lined up with what William had said. My phone lit up again, this time with a text from William. "James, I'm truly sorry for what happened. I misjudged the situation. Please come to the office. Not just for the deal, but so we can talk privately." The offer was tempting, but I wasn't about to waltz back in like nothing had gone down. Ethan didn't just fire me, he humiliated me, dismissed 11 years of blood and sweat. A panicked text wasn't enough to erase that. I replied, my tone short but firm. "I'll consider returning to finalize the Al Mansur deal, but I want to meet you in person first. And I have some conditions." I wasn't petty, but I wasn't weak either. I wanted justice, the quiet, smart kind that made Ethan pay for his arrogance. But to pull it off, I needed more information. I called Sarah back, keeping my voice low to avoid being overheard. "Sarah, what's the vibe in the office? Anything off?" She chuckled, like she was sharing gossip over beers at the bar near the office. "Off? James, the place is a powder keg. Ethan's trying to act cool, but everyone can see he's freaking out. He just had a meeting with some directors, talking about restructuring the team. But I overheard him. He told them you're unreliable, that you slowed down the Al Mansur deal. He's trying to pin this on you." I frowned, a spark of heat rising in my chest but quickly snuffed out. "He said that." "Yup, and that's not all," Sarah went on. "This morning a weird email went out from your account to a marketing director. It had totally wrong info about Al Mansur, like you were trying to sabotage it. Lucky I caught it and flagged it to IT. They're looking into it, but James, This isn't random. Someone's playing dirty. I thanked Sarah, hung up, and jotted down the call's details in a private notebook. I'd learned long ago that in corporate life, a paper trail beats emotions every time. Fake emails, rumors, blame shifting. Ethan wasn't just trying to fire me. He wanted to smear my reputation, make people think I was incompetent. He thought I'd stay quiet, but he was dead wrong. I opened my laptop, logged into the company system, and checked my email history. Sure enough, an email had been sent from my account at 8 a.m., but I hadn't sent it. The content was off base about the Al Mansur contract's value, enough to raise red flags with the client if it had reached them. I screenshotted it, saved it to my evidence folder, emailed IT, requesting an investigation. I suspect unauthorized access to my account, I wrote, keeping my tone neutral but clear. I didn't need to confront Ethan head-on. The truth would do that for me. But I knew I was playing a dangerous game. If Ethan caught wind that I was collecting evidence, he'd try to lock my account, or spread worse rumors. I had to move carefully, quietly, like my dad used to check his gear before a mission. I called an old friend, Mike, a freelance lawyer, who'd worked with the company before. Mike, I need you to look over a contract and give me some advice, but keep it off the books, I said. Mike agreed, and I sent him a copy of the Al Mansur contract, highlighting the authorization clause. Just tell me if this clause has my back, I said. While waiting for his reply, I thought about Emily. She was starting middle school soon, and I'd promised to take her to the Cubs season opener next year. But getting fired had me staring down financial pressure. Rent, tuition, and a stack of bills piling up. I couldn't let Ethan take Emily's future. I opened a drawer, pulled out a photo of me and her at Wrigley Field, my dad standing beside us, smiling proud. Just do right, James, he'd say. Justice doesn't need to be loud. I set the photo down, my resolve stronger than ever. By noon, Mike called back. James, that authorization clause is ironclad. No one but you can negotiate this deal without breaking legal ground. Ethan's got no play if you hold your ground. Mike's words were like a cool breeze, solidifying my confidence. I didn't just have the truth. I had power, and I was going to use it smart. I stood, put on a suit, picking the navy one I wore for big meetings. I checked my dad's watch, slipped it onto my wrist, feeling its weight like a reminder of dignity. I wasn't going back to the office as a fired employee. I was going back as a man who knew his worth, and I'd make Ethan see it. As I left the apartment, I glanced at the Chicago River one last time. This city had weathered every storm, and so would I. I drove to the Loop, parking a few blocks from the office. I didn't take the familiar employee entrance. Instead, I walked through the main lobby, past the gleaming glass doors of the building. The receptionist, Jenny, jumped when she saw me. Mr. Harper, Mr. Brooks is expecting you, she stammered, eyes wide. I nodded, giving a small smile. Thanks, Jenny. As I moved through the hallway, the air shifted. Colleagues stopped typing. Whispers faded. Eyes followed me. They knew I'd been fired yesterday. My return wasn't just a move. It was a statement. I passed the cubicles, the break room with its ancient coffee machine, and reached William's office. He stood at the door, no smile, but his eyes held respect. James, he said, voice low. Thanks for coming. I nodded, no handshake, and stepped inside. He closed the door, letting out a heavy sigh. I messed up, he began. I gave Ethan too much power too fast. I wanted him to prove himself, but I didn't expect him to burn bridges before learning how to build them. I stayed silent, letting him go on. What he did to you was unprofessional, disrespectful, and nearly tanked a deal we've spent 8 months on, he said, pointing to the Al Mansur contract on his desk. You've got full authority on this deal. No one else is recognized, legally or otherwise. Come back, I said, voice firm. But I want everything in writing. A new contract, complete autonomy on Al Mansur, no interference from Ethan. And this can't happen again, to me or anyone. William nodded without hesitation. Done. You have my word. As I stepped out of his office, I saw Ethan at the end of the hall, arms crossed, pretending to talk to a junior exec. But his eyes locked onto mine the second I appeared. I didn't flinch, didn't look away. I walked right past him, and for a split second, I saw his confidence waver. He knew he was losing control, and I knew this game was just getting started. I stood in front of the glass-walled meeting room on the 32nd floor, looking out over Chicago's Loop, where sunlight glinted off the Willis Tower like a flickering flame. Today was the day I came back, not as a fired employee, but as a man in control. My dad's watch, engraved with "Time answers everything," felt heavy on my wrist, reminding me to stay calm, stay dignified. Ethan thought he could erase me, but today, the truth would speak, and it would ring louder than any accusation. I was ready. The Al Mansour contract documents were neatly arranged in my leather briefcase, evidence of Ethan's fake emails and rumors safely stored on a USB drive. I didn't want revenge through shouting or tearing him down. I wanted accountability, the kind that forces arrogant suits like Ethan to face the consequences. Sarah had warned me about his dirty games, and I was prepared to flip the board. The Al Mansour team arrived at 1 p.m., led by Ahmed Khalid, a sharp man whose eyes missed nothing. I greeted him in Arabic, a small gesture I knew he valued. "You remembered," he said, flashing a rare smile, his voice warm. "Respect is the key, Mr. Harper." I nodded, ushering his team into the meeting room, where documents were laid out on the polished oak table. The meeting lasted 2 hours, but it went flawlessly. I presented the final terms, answering every question with the confidence of someone who'd lived with this deal for 8 months. I highlighted the benefits for Al Mansour, from financial value to a long-term partnership with our firm. Ahmed listened, nodded, and finally shook my hand. "I like working with people who know what they're doing," he said. We signed the $20 million contract right there, a victory not just for the company, but for my dignity. As the Al Mansour team left, William stepped in, his face a mix of relief and respect. "James, you saved us," he said, voice low. "I owe you more than an apology. You owe this company a leader," I replied, meeting his gaze. "Someone who knows the difference between power and responsibility." William nodded, but I knew the story wasn't over. Ethan wasn't one to go down quietly. Over the next week, I noticed more subtle sabotage. A reimbursement for my travel expenses got delayed for no reason. A critical document I submitted was returned unsigned. Then another fake email from my account, this time sent to a minor client, containing wrong info about an old project. Luckily, the client called me directly to clarify, but the incident showed Ethan was trying to chip away at my credibility, one step at a time. I logged everything, dates, times, email contents, conversations in a private notebook. I'd reported the incidents to IT, and they confirmed the fake emails came from a shared workstation near the break room, not an outside hack. Someone in the office was deliberately sabotaging me, and I knew it was Ethan. He wasn't trying to fire me anymore. That had failed. Now he wanted to make me look incompetent, hoping I'd quit in frustration or get pushed out by someone else. But I was ready. I emailed Mark Sullivan, the head of internal audit, attaching evidence of the fake emails and requesting an investigation. "I believe there's suspicious activity targeting my account," I wrote, keeping my tone neutral but sharp. Mark replied promptly, "We're looking into it. Come to the office Thursday. We need to talk." On Thursday, I arrived early, stepping into the temporary audit room, a former storage closet turned war room. Files were stacked on tables, screens glowed with data, and a whiteboard was covered with timelines and digital breadcrumbs. Mark greeted me, his voice serious. "James, thanks for coming. We want to ask about some recent irregularities." He pulled up a file on the screen. "The fake email from your account. We confirmed it was sent from a shared workstation near the break room. Someone manually entered your login credentials." I nodded, unsurprised. "Not an outside hack?" I asked. Mark shook his head. "No, it's internal. And it's not just this email. We found others, altered documents, removed signatures, all tied to your account. There's a clear pattern, sabotage aimed at discrediting you, and a few others." I clenched my fist, but kept my voice steady. "And you've traced who's behind it?" Mark hesitated. "We've seen irregular login patterns linked to Ethan's assistant's account. We're not pointing fingers yet, but the evidence is stacking up." He looked at me, gauging my reaction. "Mr. Brooks wants us to present directly to him. You want to be there?" "I'll be there," I said, voice firm. "If the truth is coming out, I want to look everyone in the eye." That night I couldn't sleep. I thought about the other employees who'd left the company over the past year. Talented people quietly pushed out. I'd thought it was just turnover. Now I wondered how many had been victims of Ethan's dirty games. I stared at my dad's watch on the table, its second hand ticking like a heartbeat. "Just do right, James," my dad used to say. I'd do right, not just for me, but for everyone. Ethan had stepped on. The next morning, I arrived at the executive boardroom early. William was already there, staring out the window, his face like a man waiting for the final card to drop. Mark and 2 other auditors came in, carrying laptops and file folders. Ethan showed up 10 minutes late, smug as ever, phone in hand, not a trace of worry, until he saw me. "He's not on the audit committee," he snapped. William turned, his voice cold as steel. He's here at my request. Mark began, his tone even but cutting. We've traced multiple irregular logins tied to Ethan's assistant's account, all linked to incidents targeting James's work. Fake emails, altered documents, removed signatures. There's a clear timeline. Ethan laughed, but it sounded forced. This is ridiculous. He's just bitter about being let go. I locked eyes with him, my voice calm but sharp as a blade. You didn't let me go, Ethan. You sabotaged me, and you nearly tanked the biggest deal this company's had in 5 years. William stood, his gaze heavy. I gave you chances, he said, voice low. More than I should have. But all you've done is tear down the people trying to build this company. Ethan opened his mouth to argue, but the words died. He looked at me, this time not with arrogance, but with panic, like he'd just realized no trick was going to save him now. William issued the orders. You're suspended, effective immediately. The board will review this report. Ethan walked out, silent, shoulders slumped. I stayed behind, watching William exhale, his face aging a decade in a moment. I failed him, he said, his voice more like a father's than a CEO's. Failed as a leader. You can't lead someone who won't grow, I replied, voice soft but firm. But you can still lead this company. William nodded, and for the first time since this all started, I felt the weight on my shoulders ease. The truth had come to light, not through shouting but through numbers, documents, and my patience. Ethan thought he could play me, but he didn't know that in this game, I'd been a few moves ahead. 2 weeks had passed since the audit meeting, but the echoes of that morning still rippled through the office. Ethan Brooks was gone, his smug CEO chair, now just fodder for hushed break-room gossip. The board moved fast. The evidence from the audit was airtight. Fake emails, irregular logins, tampered documents, and attempts to smear me, all traced back to Ethan or people he'd manipulated. His suspension quickly turned into termination. The internal memo was brief. No lawsuits, no fanfare, just a cold line. Ethan Brooks has left the company due to breaches of ethical conduct and internal misconduct. But the whole office knew the truth, and the whispers spread like wildfire. I thought I'd feel triumphant when I heard Ethan was out. I didn't. I just felt calm. Not a blazing victory, but a steady certainty, like I'd weathered a storm and could finally breathe. My dad's watch, engraved with "Time Answers Everything," ticked steadily on my new desk, reminding me that justice doesn't need to be loud. It just needs the truth, and I'd let the truth do the talking. One morning, William called me into his office, closing the door behind us. He sat at his desk, a folder in front of him, unopened. I've been thinking a lot, he began, voice low, about what happened, and about the future I want for this company. He looked at me, his eyes sincere. James, you've shown more leadership than I've seen from most executives. You protected our biggest deal, kept your cool through public humiliation, and handled personal attacks with professionalism. That's the kind of person I want steering this company. He slid the folder across the desk. Inside was a promotion letter. Director of Client Strategy, a C-suite role reporting directly to him. I looked up, caught off guard. I didn't ask for this, I said, voice even. I know, William replied. That's why you deserve it. I thought it over, then gave a small nod. If I take this, I want to be clear about how we move forward. I don't just want a title. I want to rebuild this company's culture, the right way. William smiled, the first time I'd seen him relax. That's exactly what I was hoping you'd say. I started the job the next week, moving into a temporary office while the new floor was renovated. I reopened communication channels, holding team meetings to hear from junior staff. I reinstated 2 employees who'd been unfairly pushed out over the past year, victims of Ethan's games. I also set up an anonymous reporting system, so no one had to fear retaliation for speaking up. The office started to shift. Laughter echoed in the break room again. Meetings felt more open. But not everyone welcomed me with open arms. Some colleagues, especially a few mid-level directors, eyed me with suspicion. I caught whispers during breaks. Harper got that promotion playing politics. Or he used the Ethan mess to climb the ladder. One director, Paul, even said it to my face in a meeting. No offense, James, but this all fell into place a little too neatly, didn't it? Ethan goes down, and you get a shiny new chair. I kept my cool, offering a faint smile. No offense taken, Paul, but if you want to talk truth, I've got a USB full of evidence about what Ethan did, not just to me, but to this company. I didn't climb anything. I just did my job. Paul went quiet, but his eyes still held doubt. I didn't blame them. Offices are breeding grounds for mistrust, especially after Ethan's chaos. I knew the only way to win them over was through actions, not words. I doubled down, meeting with every team, reviewing every report, making sure every decision was transparent. Slowly, the skeptical glances turned to nods of respect. Sarah, who'd always had my back, cracked a joke at a happy hour. James, you're turning this place into somewhere worth working. But don't overdo it, or we'll get too comfortable. I laughed, sipping my beer. I just want folks to breathe without worrying about a knife in their back. But even as the office changed, I felt a lingering void. I thought about Emily, the years I'd missed because of work, those Cubs games we didn't catch together, the nights she fell asleep before I got home. This promotion wasn't just a personal win, it was a chance to keep my promise to her, a better life, and a dad who's actually there. I called Emily that night, promising to take her to the Cubs season opener. For real, Dad, she squealed, and that voice was worth more than any title. I thought about my dad too, the man who taught me that integrity is something no one can steal. His watch, with its time answers everything, engraving, had been my compass through this storm. I hadn't been defeated, and I hadn't let myself turn bitter. I'd been underestimated, dismissed, sabotaged, but I'd stood tall, not for bragging rights, but because I knew my worth. One afternoon, passing the meeting room where I'd signed the Al Mansour deal, I paused, looking through the glass. I remembered the moment I smiled at Ethan and walked out of his office, refusing to beg. That was the turning point, not because I gave up, but because I knew my value, and I wouldn't let anyone, not even the boss's son, take that away. Justice had done its work, not through shouting but through patience, evidence, and truth. I returned to my office, glancing at the blank nameplate on the door. My name would be engraved there soon, but the title didn't matter as much as what I was building. A place where hard work was respected, and the truth always found the light. Ethan thought he could play me, but he didn't know that in this game, integrity was always the strongest move. One evening, I sat in my new office, the glow of Chicago's loop shimmering through the window. The room still smelled of fresh paint, but it was starting to feel like home. Not because my name was etched on the door, but because I was building something worthwhile. My dad's watch lay on the desk, its second hand ticking steadily, the engraving time answers everything, catching the light. I picked it up, feeling its weight, and smiled. My dad, a Vietnam vet, had been right. Time had answered, not with shouts but with the truth. 11 years ago, I walked into this company with a dream, to build a career, provide for my daughter Emily, and make my dad proud. I worked hard, sacrificing nights with family, Cubs games I used to watch with him, and personal dreams to keep the company standing tall. But when Ethan Brooks fired me, called me lazy, and tossed me out like trash, I thought all that effort had been for nothing. I was wrong. Those years didn't just build the company, they built me, a man who knew his worth, and no one, not even the boss's son, could take that away. This journey wasn't easy. I was humiliated, sabotaged, doubted, but I learned that professionalism isn't weakness, and integrity is the strongest weapon. When Ethan tried to smear me with fake emails and rumors, I didn't hit back with anger. I hit back with evidence, patience, and a belief that the truth always finds the light. I didn't need to tear him down to win. I just needed to stand my ground, and justice took care of the rest. I thought about Emily, about my promise to take her to the Cubs season opener next year. This promotion, with a salary that covers her tuition, and the stack of bills piling up, is how I keep that promise. But more than that, it's a chance to be the dad she deserves, one who's there, not just on the phone at midnight. I thought about my dad, who taught me that a man is defined by how he faces adversity. Just do right, James, he'd say. And I did right, not just for me, but for everyone. Ethan trampled, those who never got a chance to speak their truth. Ethan's just a name in the past now. I heard he's hunting for jobs at small firms out of state, but his reputation got there first. Maybe William shielded him from a public scandal, a final act of a father. I don't care. What matters is the company's changing. Communication channels are open, employees feel heard, and the anonymous reporting system ensures no one fears retaliation. I didn't win by bragging. I won by building a better place. Looking at my dad's watch, I realized the biggest lesson: justice doesn't need to be loud. It needs patience, competence, and self-respect. I used to think silence was how you kept the peace, but silence almost cost me everything. Now I know standing up, not with fists, but with truth, is the real way to win. Some might call that old school. I call it integrity. As I left the office, I passed the meeting room where I signed the Al Mansour deal, where I faced Ethan, and walked out with a smile. That was the moment I knew I wouldn't break. I'd been underestimated, betrayed, but never defeated, and I'll never let anyone steal my light again. Thanks for watching my story, folks. If you liked it, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next one. Your support helps me share these lessons with more people. See you soon.